If you're using Flutterflow with Supabase, there's a good chance you're going to come across this problem already, which is forgot password needs some custom actions to make it work. It's not particularly complicated, and what we're going to do in the first instance is go through it in its very simplest form, show how it's done, and then at the end of the video we'll go through some extra steps to make your app a bit more robust, a little bit more secure. Let's get stuck in. So we're starting in our Flutterflow project on our login page, and ultimately the only thing that really matters here in the terms of this particular problem is the forgot password text, and all we've got on there is an action on the password text, an action that takes us to the forgot password page. Nothing to pass, no parameters, purely just a link essentially. So then that we open forgot password. And then what this does, as usual, if you're on any website and you've forgot your password, put in your email address, click the button, and you get your update password confirmation email, and then you fill in all the relevant bits, get a new password. This is absolutely no different. So it's fairly obvious. Got the email, we've got the update button, and then on the update button, this is where we'll open the action flow editor. This is where we've got the Supabase auth action, which is built into Flutterflow, which I'll show in a second. And then now it's got a alert dialog that says if you've sent, put an email address that matches something in the database, you'll get the new reset password email. So this particular action here, I'll add another one in, delete it again afterwards, just so we can demonstrate where you get it from. And then we go back in the database, Supabase authentication, reset password, and that is our the action we're putting in. And then it's text field 1, which is the only text box on the page, so it's obviously you can rename it password or password reset email or whatever. Just left it as text field because it's the only one. So that's all you do on that page, and all that action does is triggers the reset password email. It does not reset your password despite it being called reset password. That will trigger Supabase to send you an email, which is where you click on your magic link to reset your password. So we'll go on to that next. So what happens is you click on your magic link, which takes you to your update password page in Flutterflow on your web app. So what we'll do, we'll go through it in a minute on the Supabase side. But at the first instance, in here, you'd put in your new password, click update, and then you got some actions. There's a page state in there, which is not really required, to be honest. You can just as easily just use the text field, but for some reason I put a page state in there. So the custom action, which go to the code in a sec, it needs one parameter passed into it, which is new password. In this instance, I've used the page state. You could just as easily use just plain widget state, as I've just said, which either or, it really makes no difference whatsoever. And then that navigates you back to your login page once you've completed all that, so you can log in with your new password. So when you click on it, the custom action triggers a bit of code, change your password in Supabase auth, and then you're good to carry on. So that bit of code is a custom action. So when you're creating a custom action, then you just add one. This one is already there, change password, and this is the code you want to put in. I'll provide a link to copy and paste this from, so you don't have to memorize it or write it. There is the new password parameter we're passing into it, which is here, and then that then passes it into the Supabase auth with the parameter of the new password to essentially replace your password. It's actually really straightforward from that respect. Nothing complicated about it at all on the Flutterflow side, and really not on the Supabase side either. So using our blank auth project, this works when it's been published to the web. It also works for a PWA as well as a web app, obviously. but it only works when you publish to web because you have to do some stuff in Supabase related to the URL, which we'll get onto now. So URL configuration. So into Supabase, you go into authentication, URL configuration, and then you need to put in the URL of your Flutterflow project. Now that could be the one you get when you publish it, or it could be one you've done from a custom domain. And then in your redirect URLs, this is, as it says there, this is where permitted to redirect it to after post authentication, because on your magic link you get a authentication token which essentially relogs you in to be able to change your password so you can relog in, and that needs to be authenticated, permitted to be able to do just that. So essentially it is the URL of your update password page. So that is the URL of that page there when it's published. Then the only thing you have to do in Supabase is in your templates. So auth, email templates, reset password template. Essentially this is mostly pre-filled in. You can change the wording obviously. The confirmation URL is the URL of your site, and then you have to add the update password bit or whatever you are calling your update password page, and that will then match that. So essentially when your user clicks on your update password link in the email, they'll take you to the update password page, fill in the password, and then you're good to go. And that's all you need to do to make this work in its most basic form. There's a few things which in reality, if you're building this at any kind of scale, you need to do more, but in its most basic form, that's essentially how it works. Okay, so what do we need to think about beyond what we've just done? So that works in its simplest format. Changing your password, how we've just done it, will work. However, there are a few things you need to think about which you may want to sort of add into whatever it is you're doing. First one being error handling, which I'll come on to in a second. Now you may decide that as it is good enough for your use case, you don't need to worry about any of that stuff, but adding the error handling isn't really that complicated, and I'd certainly recommend you do it. So what we've got is our original function, as you can see, just basically changes the password. Now if your user types in a password that's too short, or tries to use the same password again, Supabase will throw an exception which will show up in the console. However, your user will not know anything about that. Got some errors there, nothing to do with me, hopefully. User will know nothing about that, because what will happen is they'll click update, nothing will happen, because the change password function will not be completed its work, and therefore you won't navigate to the login page. So the other option, now this is pretty simple. It's maybe a little bit not very elegant possibly, but it does the job and it works. So what we're doing, we are catching the errors that are thrown back from Supabase, should there be any, and we have got a app state, and what we're doing, we are sending the error message that is sent back from Supabase to the app state variable. Now there's a couple of reasons why you maybe necessarily wouldn't do that if you're building like a something that was a bit more enterprise grade, I suppose. But if you're just building a simple get it out the door, see if it works, this is fine, and that's because you're showing the user the error code and stuff, which obviously you're not meant to do. But in this instance, it also has the error code and the reason for the error, so the user will see that your password is not long enough, or you've tried to use the same password again, or whatever. I've tested it and it works. So what happens is, now if you go back into we've actually got password error. So essentially, if your change password is successful, your custom action is successful, it just navigates to login, and if it's not successful, you'll throw the custom error in an alert dialog. So that's something you probably want to consider thinking about adding in. It's not difficult to do. The code will be available alongside the other one down below to download. So the next thing you'd need to think about, which is not necessarily critical if you're just building a small app, but something that if you get a few users, you're definitely going to have to do, and that is Supabase has rate limits on emails. So it's 30 emails an hour. So if your users signing up or getting forgot password queries and that kind of thing, Supabase inbuilt email sender only going to send 30 emails an hour. So, and they recommend obviously for you to not use that. So you can set up a custom provider, which we'll go through at a later date, because that's obviously a different topic to this one. However, that is something you probably want to consider. And then the final thing, which is kind of more general but not specific to password reset, and that is two-factor authentication. Because if your user's email has been compromised, obviously they can currently reset the password without a second set of authentication. So depending on the scope of your app and the sort of stuff that's in it, if it's not critical or not personal information or whatever, you may not need to bother. But obviously most big organisations these days do. You can have it opt in and opt out, and that's something that we're going to look into again at a later date and build our own 2FA system and see if we can get that to work. Sounds like a good idea. Whether it is or not, I guess I'll find that out in time. So yeah, there's a few things that you want to think about, but other than that, that's how you change your password with Supabase and Flutterflow.